What's up, Swole Soldiers? Welcome to episode 18 of the Strength House podcast. We're coming to you on 4th of July weekend with a bit of a mini episode out here in the great wilderness of Marlborough, Massachusetts, where we're going to talk about novice training for powerlifters, entering your first powerlifting meet, and what Tony and I learned way back almost a decade ago when we first started competing in powerlifting. Happy 4th of July.
The Strength House Podcast, featuring Greg Robbins and Tony Bonvecchio.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to episode 18 of the Strength House Podcast. We are doing a special 4th of July weekend edition, and therefore we are coming to you live from the outer parts of the Strength House. We are in the side yard here, as you can tell by our backdrop, and this is definitely my favorite studio so far.
It's definitely got the best ventilation. You know, that upstairs studio sometimes gets a little stuffy.
Yeah. Something about being outside too, where I feel like my beer consumption doubles at least.
Yep. Well, which is ironic because we're coming at you, planned for a mini episode today. We looked at each other, we said, oh no, Tuesday's a holiday.
Yep.
So we're gonna get in a mini one here. We'll try to keep it a little bit shorter. The plan is to only drink one beer. We'll see how well that holds up. But you know, we're coming at you to wish you a happy 4th of July. And the number 4 kind of is a special number today because I think today was a big day in your lifting career. I think it's worth telling all the listeners right off the bat that Greg hit his first 400-pound bench press today.
400 pounds.
400 pounds. That's big. You could have saved it for tomorrow and done 400 on the 4th.
True, but
I guess you're not American enough.
I stick to the program. There's something American about bench pressing on Monday. You know, it used to be everyone's bench pressing on a Monday, so you're only cool if you don't bench press on Monday. But
you know, I just realized this.
I like to just join the. Look at that.
This koozie not really gonna work.
I thought you were just gonna put it on your can and abandon the glass.
So I got this awesome new can last weekend or whenever it was, and we went up to the Alchemist, and I don't really know what you call this can, but supposedly it's designed specifically for IPAs.
It's not a can, actually. It's a glass.
You knew what I meant. But it's not going to fit, so I guess I'm just going to go straight out of the can. That's summertime in a nutshell, right?
That's why I decided, since we were outside, I was going to abandon the glass and just go with the koozie.
Yep. So today our planned one beer is Eureka from Treehouse, a blonde ale. Greg and I went to Treehouse on Friday, bright and early.
Very early.
Front of the line. Waited a long time thinking we were going to get something awesome. And while this beer is quite excellent, it's probably less coveted than other Treehouses. But
it's a light beer, yeah.
It's about as good summertime drinking as you're going to get.
Yeah, it's been serving me well all weekend so far.
All right, so we came up with a predetermined topic today. We wanted to chat a little bit about our own experiences as first-time powerlifters. So we're going to go back, way back, turn the clock back, and talk about our first ever meet, what we learned, and how we've been able to pass on that wisdom to other lifters that we've coached.
Yep.
So mine's more recent than yours. I did my first meet in 2010, a couple months after I graduated from college. When was your first meet?
Well, actually, yeah, mine's not any. I think we probably started powerlifting around the same time. Mine was probably 2010 too, actually.
My first one was in Burlington, Vermont. I competed in the 100% Raw Federation, which is not super popular, definitely not on the level of like USAPL or RPS or anything like that, but they basically had like all the USAPL / IPF rules like really, really strict, down to the point where the only equipment you could wear was a belt, not even wrist wraps.
No clothes.
No clothes, just nude with the exception of a belt. Okay. And you know, I've been lifting weights since probably like my freshman year of high school, so going on like 4 years or so, or freshman year of college rather, and had just kind of started to lift with a powerlifting focus.
Yeah.
And I remember going in and I actually cut out all alcohol 12 weeks out for the meet.
Big mistake.
And like looking back now and examining my current lifestyle, like what a fucking crazy thing to do.
Yeah, I think 2 weeks is plenty.
I don't think it added to my total at all. But big takeaways from that meet. Technique was a big time limiting factor. I remember several more seasoned powerlifters coming up to me and being like, hey, like, great job, but like, here are a couple things that you could work on. And I remember thinking like, yeah, okay, buddy, like kind of not being very receptive to feedback. But then this was in the era almost before you filmed anything and everything, but did film the lifts and looked back at the lifts and was like, holy shit. I don't know a lot about lifting, but I know that looks bad.
Yeah.
I think I totaled like something like 1260 or something like that. I squatted, I think, like 446, benched 308, deadlifted 500. And I think I hit every lift except for my opening bench. I opened at 275 and smoked it, but my ass came this far off the bench just because I was pressing so damn hard. And I tried to jump to 440 or 545 on my third deadlift, and I never touched anything, I think, over 515 because I wanted to hit a 1300 total and just like didn't even move it. So big takeaways from my first meet. Listen to more seasoned lifters. Even if you're in the heat of the moment in competition and you're not feeling very open-minded, know that they're just trying to help. And don't try to jump up 45 pounds on your last deadlift if it's your first meet.
That is a big jump. Yeah, I'd say from what I can remember, mine are similar. I want to say I squatted like 450, 455, somewhere around there. I only bench pressed like 285, I think, and deadlifted maybe like mid fives or low, like I can't remember exactly, but it was like maybe 530, 540, somewhere around there. I'm pretty sure 285 bench was just what I hit on my first attempt. I missed 2 other attempts, one for my ass coming up and then one because it was too heavy, or maybe it was both because my ass came up. But I think the big things I thought about takeaway wise also had to do with technique. From the squat side of things, what really threw me off was not practicing enough out of a monolift, because that's what we squatted out of, and not getting a feel for like the equipment that will be used in the. I know not everyone has the luxury of doing that, but if you are doing a meet and you do know like a gym which is within like an hour drive of you that is going to have the same equipment that you're going to have to use in the meet, I think it is a good idea to go get familiar with it, because especially like in RPS, what this meet was, the squat, it was like a Texas squat bar or something similar, so much bigger, longer, thicker bar that was heavier, and so that felt really weird on my back, and I remember that giving me some trouble. With the bench, I didn't practice nearly enough in the gym, like pausing my benches, getting commands, obviously keeping my ass down, which has always been kind of a pet peeve thing for me, like or something I struggle with. But I didn't do enough in the gym to like keep myself what's the word I'm looking for? Honest, yeah. When it came to the bench and how it would have to be performed in the meet. Deadlift went pretty fine. Deadlifting, I think, is just something I've always taken to a little bit better. So I think from what I remember, I performed pretty well for myself on the deadlift and hit all 3 attempts. But squat and bench press were a little bit more of a nightmare.
I've brought novice lifters to their first meets before at RPS meets where they do use a monolift, and that's shaking people up a little bit. And like you said, the squat bar, which I think now the squat bar that RPS uses at most meets is like 75 pounds. So it's big, huge. It's thicker, so it's harder to keep it like in one spot. A lot of people will get like pitched forward by it, and absolutely, I think it gets in people's heads. But if you look hard enough, especially like in the New England area, there are plenty of powerlifting gyms where I think you could go and at least practice like a couple times. Yeah. I remember leading up to some more recent meets, I would drive an hour from Providence to then Everett, Massachusetts to go train at Total Performance Sports, TPS, your old stomping grounds, just to train with a bigger squat bar, to train out of the monolift, just to prepare for, kind of practicing like you play, if you will.
Yeah, I mean, I really had no excuse because I worked there at TPS during the time of my first meet. I think for me it was, and my training partner at the time, Jamie, we had never competed in powerlifting, so, you know, we were worried a lot more about, like, making sure our programming was good, coming up to the meet, and didn't even really think that, you know, that we wouldn't be able to have the same feel. Like, we were just squatting out of a like elite collegiate rack, even though we had a monolift available to us. I think we were using an Olympic barbell a lot of times too for the squatting, which is thinner than most bars and flexier. So it was the exact opposite of what we would feel in the meet. So that was just like a logistical mistake from a training standpoint. I think too, like, I don't know if there's any way to really prepare for this, but obviously it helps, like, if you're part of a team or you have a coach or something like that can help manage, you know, warming up and things like that. Even my first few meets, I wasn't great about that. Warming up too early a lot of times, and just not being prepared in total for, like, how long the day might be.
Yep.
I remember my first meet was ridiculously long, kind of like we talked about last week. I think we were pulling deadlifts at, like, 10:30 at night or something like that.
Yep, hard to prepare for that, for sure.
Yeah.
You're not going to purposely stretch your training sessions out over 8, 10, 12 hours, even though meets run that way sometimes. What did you weigh in at for your first meet?
I think I competed in 198s, and I was, like, low 190s probably.
Yep, I weighed in at 198 as well. I would walk around at right about 190, but the day of the meet, I was just, like, so nervous about, or sorry, the 24-hour weigh-ins, I was so nervous about not making weight that I just, like, didn't eat any solid foods the day of the weigh-in, and weighed in at something like 184. And the guy who weighed me is like, why don't you, like, just go take a shit and make 181? Like, no, I think I'll be okay. And you definitely learn from there that, like, you can really lose a couple pounds quick just by, like, not eating solid foods or, like, cutting out liquids. Never really served me well because I only cut weight purposefully once, and it was for that 16-hour meet that Gags was talking about. And I vowed to myself never, ever, ever cut that much weight ever again.
No, I learned that maybe, like, my third meet, where, like, I was finally going to hit some goals that I'd had for a long time. Deadlift 600, squat over 500, bench press over 300. Those were kind of like the first goals, and I pretty much had those in the bag, and I decided that I want to compete in 198, and I was, like, walking around at, like, 206, and I ended up weighing in at, like, 196 or something like that. I just cut a bunch of weight using, like, wrestling type tactics to do it.
It never works out well, man. Like, I can't,
No.
Unless there's, like, world records or lots of money on the line. I've never seen anybody cut weight, fall short of their goals, but be happy that they, like, won their weight class or whatever. You know, I think it's way more satisfying to perform to the best of your abilities, even if it's, like, a weight class higher than you think you need to be.
Yeah. No, yeah, don't recommend that at all to anyone. And I don't recommend, I really think you should go 9 for 9 in your first meet too.
Yeah, that's a great goal to have.
That should be, like, your biggest goal of the day, is to go 9 for 9. And I think that's something that's easier to do if you have a coach. Because if you don't, like, in my case, I had a training partner, and so I didn't, like, completely decide all my own training. We kind of helped each other, but you start to get numbers in your own head, and then you just want to try to achieve those numbers instead of just sticking to a overall plan that someone with more experience has helped map out for you.
Yep.
Because I know as a coach now, a lot of times, especially if it's their first meet, I'll purposely hold someone back a little bit, even if I know they could probably give something a run. A lot changes on meet day depending mentally where you're at and how the day is going. So as long as they think they're achieving all the exact goals we set out for, and they are, because we're thinking more long term, then it's a better day.
Yep. And I didn't have a coach for my first meet either. I was there kind of all by myself, and had I had a coach, they could have told me for my third deadlift, instead of trying to take a tremendous jump and total 1,300, they could have been like, all right, man, you'll get 1,300 at your next meet. Like, just jump 15 pounds, hit a small PR. You've definitely got it. I think I would have walked away from that day feeling a lot better, instead of like just completely torching myself on a weight that I had no business moving. Do I see Josh Percival asking a question?
Nah,
Good old Josh.
Just comments so far.
He's a little jealous of us right now. We didn't even introduce our entourage here.
No, we
We're
didn't.
so
Sorry.
far ahead of ourselves. So we've got Frank Duffy in the house, chilling on the lawn, drinking a shandy. Man, how the mighty have fallen. And then we've got Irish Kate, our producer. She took a week off. That's fine. She decided, 1 week of producing, she deserved a week's vacation. But she's back now, enjoying the lovely weather. So, what do you guys think of the new studio setup? Big fan? Yeah, I like it.
It might not go as well at night, but
We haven't run into any bug situations yet. That was my biggest fear, because I'm pretty afraid of bugs that sting.
luckily they're also different from me, so
Perfect. We should hang out more. I didn't want all our viewers to see me run around like a chicken with its head cut off should a bee or a wasp or something.
we get a lot of moths.
I don't like moths.
Man, I know you don't like them, but they don't come out till night time.
Alright,
So
perfect. Got a couple hours of daylight still here. I know we had a question that got asked on Instagram. Our friend Casey Lee of Parisi Speed and Strength Faction fame. Kate, you got that pulled up?
I haven't seen it actually.
Oh, I think it's on. I think you posted it on my Instagram post from earlier. He'd asked us a question, something about novice powerlifters in a team setting. It was a great question, from what I remember.
sounds good. Any last thoughts on your first powerlifting meet?
I would say I went to the extreme on everything technique wise. So I squatted with my feet almost as wide as possible, like West Side style in Chuck Taylor. So like my knees were basically like caved in so bad that they were almost touching, And for my bench, I gripped as wide as possible. And for my deadlift, I don't know, I guess my deadlift was pretty bad, but not because of anything I was trying to do. It was just bad because I sucked. I wasn't very strong. But over the course of my powerlifting career, everything kind of swung back to the middle. Squat stance got a little narrower, bench grip got a little more moderate, and just came to understand that these elite level powerlifters or these geared powerlifters, that their technique wasn't necessarily the best technique for me, and somehow managed to survive a couple meets of that very extreme technique usage without any sort of injuries or anything. So pretty lucky on that front.
Cool.
All right. Podcast question from Coach Casey Lee. In the GAG show, you guys talked about powerlifting starting up as a high school sport. Can you guys talk about how you start true novice lifters in a powerlifting team setting? Do you have prerequisite training experience? Thanks, guys.
Great question by Casey. Something that I run into quite a bit with the women's powerlifting group that I coach at CSP, and something that we have been talking about quite a bit lately. And I guess the answer to the question is you don't really need a ton of experience or any experience at all, really. But it's just about choosing the right variation of the power list for that lifter at that time. I think a lot of times you can fit a lifter into a barbell squat, a barbell bench press, a barbell deadlift right off the bat, but sometimes it's not the back squat. They can almost always barbell bench press, but sometimes it's not straight bar, conventional, or sumo deadlift from the floor. So a lot of times what I'll do is whenever somebody new comes into the group and wants to train with us, I'll throw them right into the fire with whatever we're doing that day and kind of evaluate during the warm-ups, like how do they look? Do they look confident? Is their technique okay? Do they have any like glaring mobility restrictions? And if that's the case, we'll just put them on something different. So maybe somebody can't back squat yet, but they can front squat okay. Or maybe they got to do a double kettlebell front squat where it's not necessarily a barbell lift, but they're still getting a training effect. But a lot of times people are pretty adamant to be a part of the team. and Casey's question specifically asking about teams, I think one of the worst things that you can do for somebody, if you're a coach and somebody wants to come train with your team, is to isolate them too much. And be like, all right, you got to, I know it's like en vogue to be like, you got to earn your right to do this, got to earn your right to do that. Sometimes the inclusiveness of making people feel like they're part of the team is going to make people progress a lot faster than choosing like the quote unquote right exercise, you know. And I don't think any of the power lifts are so dependent on pristine mobility or pristine stability that you can't do them sooner rather than later. So maybe small variants of the barbell lifts, but I'm certainly not going to take somebody and say you must go from goblet squat to double kettlebell front squat to SSB squat to front squat, and then you're going to back squat. Like, I want them to back squat with the team as soon as possible.
Makes sense. Yeah, I think like one big difference is you have to think about like how you're going to run said powerlifting team. So, you know, the way you run your powerlifting team is it's a small enough group and you're there the whole time that you're pretty much watching every rep that's performed. So when that's the case, like, you're not gonna hurt someone just because they can't do the exercise correctly right away, as long as you don't load them up too much. So you can work through some mobility and stability issues sometimes just by doing the exercise and using a light enough load that even if you do it wrong, you're not going to hurt yourself. So if you're there as the coach to make corrections the whole time as they go, then you don't maybe need to lean towards another kind of programming philosophy, which might be, all right, I might not see every rep that this person does, so I can't choose a back squat because I can't be sure that they're going to do these very well. Whereas I know they can do a front squat or a goblet squat or SSB squat. I know they can hammer those out pretty well without me there. So, like you said, there could be a little bit of growing pains and a little bit of time for them to learn the technique and still feel like they're part of the team, and they'll probably be fine. Or, as you mentioned too, yeah, you can just give them, I'm sure you're gonna, like, whenever you have a program, at least when I write a program, I try to think like in general movements. So if it's like day one of our powerlifting team and today the squat is our primary exercise, and then we have, you know, bench is secondary and deadlift is like accessory or something like that, well, there's a lot of things that fit into like the squat, or basically like A1 on that day is like an axially loaded knee dominant exercise. So that could be it could be a back squat, it could be a front squat, it could be an SSB squat. Worst case scenario, if we really got to hammer some things out, it's a bar from the top loaded single leg exercise. But you can still have people change weights and then go into a barbell reverse lunge with a front squat grip if there's some limiting factor where they really can't squat on that day. If it's a powerlifting team, you know, they have to figure out how big that issue is, because part of the sport is you have to squat. So if you can't do it, but just like, I mean, if you don't have any arms, you can't play baseball, sort of thing. So like, if there's some limiting factor where you can't squat and that's not going to be able to be fixed, like you have hip issues or something where it's not going to ever be good for you to squat, then, you know, maybe you're just a bench press deadlift person for the powerlifting team if you really want to do it.
I think you made a great point that, like, coaching is often the great equalizer, right? And even if somebody can't necessarily back squat the same as the best squatter in your group, they can maybe back squat in a way that's better for them. You adjust the bar placement on their back, you adjust their hand position, you adjust their stance, or maybe you just cue them differently. Use all kinds of different environmental cues, whether it's a band around the knees or, you know, teaching somebody to squat to pins or squat to a box first. I think the closer you can keep their regression to what the group is doing, or at least like allow them to train like in the same power rack. Yeah. You know, don't put them over in the corner and say you're going to goblet squat, you know, for the next 30 minutes while the team goes through all their back squats. If you can have them share equipment so they can, you know, if they're new, they need to socialize with the current team members and get to know each other. And nothing has pushed new clients out the door for me faster than isolating them and making them feel like they're not part of the team. I've made that mistake a couple times, and it never works out well for anybody.
Yeah. And I think the other thing you have to realize, it's just something that comes with experience, I think, when you're coaching, but it's also could be a pet peeve of mine, is like, there's a long-term process sometimes to learning an exercise. So sometimes it's good enough for today, and it's like we're not gonna keep adding more things we have to work on. Like, we're not gonna hurt ourselves. We've hammered down, let's say, like knee position. Yeah, there's a couple other things here that need to be worked on, but is it really worth me working on those things with them today? Or is today, I like the idea of like, what is our one focus point for today? All right, it's keeping my knees where they need to be in the squat. And, you know, we know this person's got a commitment to this powerlifting team. I'm going to see them again 2 more times this week, and for the next, you know, hopefully for the next year or years plus. Like, we don't need to necessarily make their squat look absolutely perfect today. I think a lot of coaches kind of get off on that, like, oh, your squat sucked when you came in and I'm going to make it perfect today. And it's not likely going to happen unless it's just a bunch of quick fixes to get someone where they need to be. Like, if they have some technical stuff they really need to work on, it's going to take time. Even if you think you made it pristine, as soon as you start loading it, it's probably going to break down again anyways. So you have to just think long term, and don't spend the whole time just trying to make them into the perfect squatter day one.
Yep.
So.
It's a process. We've both been lifting over a decade, and our lifts aren't perfect. We have different stuff that we need to work on. And one thing I always remind my ladies in the powerlifting group is that, like, the stronger you get, the more your weak points will migrate. You know, and body shapes change, and you develop more muscle mass, and maybe something that used to be a weak point, you know, that's all better because you attack it, but then something else shows up. You know, it's kind of that constant tinkering process, and that's part of what I think makes powerlifting fun. You know, if you knew, okay, I'm going to train for 10 years and now everything's going to be perfect, you know, there's not that much fun about that. You want that challenge. You want to feel like you have some sort of problem to solve and challenge to overcome. It's more than just getting stronger all the time. It's getting more technically sound and tinkering as need be.
Yeah, and I think that's I think we've talked about this before. If not on the podcast, you and I have talked about it before. But the unique thing about something like powerlifting, which I think is what makes it really awesome, and why people that maybe even don't get into like super hardcore competitive powerlifting still see a lot of success, is with the industry where it is now. It's like there's so many methods to get the job done. There's so many systems to do this and that like, without some kind of defined borders to be creative within those borders, I think people just go with way too much variety and just throw too much stuff on the wall to see what sticks. Powerlifting is cool because you have some borders. We're gonna squat, bench press, and deadlift, and we're gonna focus our training around the development of those 3 lifts. And now, that's set in stone no matter who you are. So now, as a coach, you have to get creative, but you have borders, you have some rules. I think that's one thing I've always liked about some of these people that are like just kettlebell people, and all they do is use kettlebells. Obviously, they have its own shortcomings, but what I do like about it is the fact that the kettlebells are so fixed in their weights. So if you stay to like the traditional kettlebells of like 8, 12, 16, 20, 24, you really have to learn lessons about submaximal training in order to move up to your next weight, because you can't keep making these just incremental intensity changes. If you need to get to the 20 kilogram kettlebell and all you can do is the 16, for 2, you have to learn a lot of programming principles as far as volume goes and frequency and things like that, so that you can prep yourself to move up to the 20, which I think is why you have a lot of good fundamental programming coming out of that camp, more so than some of the other stuff you see. They have one tool, so they have a limited amount of exercises that they base it around, and then they have a limited amount of weight selections on top of that, so they really have to stick to like principles to get the job done.
You hear a lot of kettlebell aficionados talking about greasing the groove and just like doing the same thing over and over and over to get to build up that skill of whatever exercise they're working on. And sometimes powerlifters especially, get caught up in variety. Maybe somebody like myself who got introduced to powerlifting by reading about Westside Barbell, who uses, they use a conjugate method, so it's a lot of rotating of exercises and different bars and bands and chains and stuff, which, that might work for somebody who is at, a certain level, a very, very high level power lifter. But somebody like myself had no business, rotating exercises every week. So that concept of greasing the groove and getting very, very good and building volume at a certain exercise before you're able to jump to the next weight makes all the sense in the world. All right, so I got one more question before we sign off on this mini episode. I hear a lot of powerlifters who are thinking, or they want to compete in their first meet, but they're a little bit hesitant for whatever reason. Maybe they think they're not strong enough yet, or maybe they're just worried about lifting in front of a lot of people. What would you say to a lifter who is thinking about doing their first powerlifting meet, but they need that little push?
I would say just it's as easy to just sign up. Like, if you think you want to do it, then pick one that's at least 12 weeks away. If it's your first one and you're on the fence, maybe pick one that's like a little bit further away, maybe like 20 weeks or 16, 20 weeks away. Just sign up, pay your money, do it, and then I think what you'll see is your training start to take form. You'll start mentally, you have no choice at this point. I mean, you do have a choice, but you've signed up, you've paid your money, like you're gonna start mentally preparing, start asking more questions, and you're gonna have fun. Like or you're not, but more times than not, you're gonna have fun. And if you go and you don't like it, it is what it is. At least now you know it's not for you, or at least doing it in a meet setting is not for you. The majority, I've only run into that one time maybe, where someone didn't actually like it. I mean, even my wife did a push-pull powerlifting meet, which I came out of left field. I never thought she would do one, and even she enjoyed it. I have a second part, but I'll let you go just so I don't steal it. But I would say just sign up and see what happens.
No, I was hoping you would say just do it.
Just do it.
And nothing helps like ease the pain and the anxiety and like the social like stress of doing a meet. Nothing eases that like doing it as part of a team. Yeah. And the more first time lifters you can get together and have them do their first meet all together, I think that helps so much, because doing a meet by yourself and doing your first meet by yourself and walking in and not really knowing what to do and kind of looking around and seeing all the more seasoned lifters who just like are cool and calm and collected, like that's almost worse, right? It makes you feel like, oh my God, I'm so alone. I'm the only one here who doesn't know what they're doing. So if you have a coach, if you have teammates, that eases a lot of those stresses.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. In her case, when her schedule allowed it at that point, she was coming to the women's powerlifting group sometimes.
Yep.
But she actually went to one of the meets that the women's powerlifting group was doing.
Yeah, we had probably half a dozen ladies there who were doing their first meet.
Yeah, so she attended one before, got a feel for it, see how it was.
Probably half a dozen ladies.
And she really enjoyed it and liked what she was seeing. So then did her first meet as part of that group that you took over there, and had a good experience. Actually really enjoyed it. So yeah, just sign up, and if you can get together with a group of your friends, or find a powerlifting team around you, or an online community like the one that we've built. Even in that case, definitely don't go to the meet alone. Grab some family members or some friends, some people that can support you as well, and just have fun with it. Because the one thing I try to express to people, and I don't want it ever to get go the wrong way, is like, you're gonna sign up, and I know it's a competitive thing, but it's only competitive to a degree. Like in a sport like powerlifting, if you're in the same weight class as someone with 8 years experience and it's your first meet, they're gonna beat you pretty bad, given that they're stronger than you. So, and you're not just gonna. It's not like baseball, or one day they're just gonna show up and that person's gonna shit the bed so bad that you beat them. Like, it's really just a competition against yourself until you've reached a really high level. And even when you've reached a high level, you don't even know who's signing up half the time, so you still might have no competition on a given day. So really it's just about bettering yourself from meet to meet and just kind of thriving off the competitive atmosphere of everyone just pushing themselves, not so much everyone competing against themselves. At least that's not the feel I have ever gotten there.
No, it's like it's good and bad almost, because powerlifting, anybody can compete, and you're just going in and your main competition is yourself, which is kind of like the T-ball effect, right? So anybody can do it, which is awesome. But especially at the beginning, you can't worry about winning. You don't worry about winning your weight class. Just worry about going in, getting your first total, because everything's a PR at your first meet, technically, and then trying to gradually improve every meet from there on out.
I think we just got an invite to Costa Rica.
Did we?
We should have been filmed an outside podcast a long time ago.
You know why I loved Costa Rica?
They braided your hair?
Because that's where Isla Nublar, the island of Jurassic Park, was.
Oh.
They filmed it in Hawaii, but the story, technically occurs in Costa Rica.
I've never been to Costa Rica, but I would go. So we could pull the same thing off in Costa Rica.
We could. Yeah. I have to put on my lots of suntan lotion.
But we're going to have to bring Treehouse with us and pour it into tiki glasses or whatever.
Yep.
All right, guys, that's it for a mini episode. We just wanted to keep the ball rolling. I know a lot of you guys, look forward to listening to the podcast each week that it comes out, so don't want to give you too much of a break. We'll be back next week.
I think so.
Tuesday at our usual 8 o'clock p.m. time. Any other notes?
It's still spots for Big 3 in August, maybe a couple left. They're filling up fast.
I think there should be, 1 or 2 spots left. I haven't looked in a couple days, but we had a couple left. So if you haven't signed up yet and you want to go, make sure you do that right away, especially because the early bird discount is going to be ending here in a week or so. So if you want to save $50, then sign up now, and that is August 20th, a Sunday, third Sunday in August, I believe. So hopefully you can make it there. We'll definitely drink some beers either the day before or after the seminar as well.
Thanks to Frank Duffy for drinking our shitty beers so we can drink the good ones. Thanks to Irish Kate for producing and reading our question. And we will plan to see you guys next week. Have a great 4th of July.
See ya.